close your eyes for a moment and imagine a city that never truly sleeps. Not because it is peaceful, but because it is always listening. Footsteps echo on stone streets long after sunset. Doors close softly. Voices lower themselves without being asked. In this city, power does not shout, it whispers. Rome was not only built with marble and blood, it was built with fear, patience, and the strange comfort of being ruled by someone else. Tonight, we are not rushing into battles or counting victories. We are drifting slowly into the minds of men who held the world in their hands and still felt restless at night. This is a journey meant to be unhurried, thoughtful, and perhaps a little ironic. After all, nothing is more quietly amusing than watching powerful people realize they cannot control everything, including their own thoughts. Rome is often remembered as a city of conquest, legions marching in perfect lines, standards raised against the sky, triumphs that lasted days. But beneath the noise of celebration lived a deeper truth. Rome was a city terrified of kings. For centuries, Romans believed that no single person should ever hold absolute authority. They associated kingship with arrogance, cruelty, and humiliation. And yet, almost without noticing, they created something even more powerful than a king. They created the emperor. This transformation did not happen overnight. It unfolded slowly, like a long evening where one candle is added after another until the room is suddenly bright and no one remembers when the darkness left. The Roman people did not wake up one morning and announce that they wanted emperors. They wanted safety. They wanted order. They wanted stability. After years of chaos and civil war, and most of all, they wanted someone else to carry the burden of decision. Power in Rome was never just about command. It was about permission. The permission to act, the permission to punish, the permission to be feared. What is fascinating is how willingly this permission was given, as long as it came wrapped in the language of tradition and restraint. The emperor was not called a king. He was called a protector, a guardian, a first citizen. Titles were chosen carefully, like words whispered to avoid waking a sleeping conscience. Tonight we begin a long and winding journey through the lives of 6 Roman emperors. These men were not simply rulers, they were experiments. Each one revealed something unsettling about authority and the human mind. Some began as reluctant leaders, others were welcomed with cheers. A few inspired hope before turning into cautionary tales. Together they form a quiet lesson that echoes through history. Power does not change people as much as it reveals them. You might expect stories of ambition and cruelty, and yes, there will be moments of darkness, but there will also be hesitation, insecurity, loneliness, and irony. There is something strangely human about an emperor who controls millions of lives, yet cannot escape his own anxiety. Rome teaches us that absolute authority is rarely comfortable. It is heavy. It isolates. It keeps its owner awake at night, listening for footsteps in the hallway. This is not a story about heroes or villains. It is a story about systems and psychology, about how fear travels upward as easily as it travels down, about how a man who rules the world can still feel trapped by expectation. The Roman emperor was always watched by senators, by soldiers, by the people, and most of all, by history itself. As we move forward, imagine Rome not as a place of constant noise, but as a city holding its breath. Marble columns glow faintly under moonlight. Torches flicker. Somewhere inside a palace, an emperor lies awake, wondering who among his friends will still be loyal tomorrow. This is the Rome we explore tonight. Quiet, uneasy, powerful, and deeply human. Our journey begins with a question that haunted Rome for generations. If kings are dangerous, why does power keep finding its way back into the hands of one man? The answer lies not in strength, but in exhaustion. After years of political violence, betrayals, and civil wars, the Roman people were tired. Tired of choosing sides, tired of uncertainty, tired of freedom that felt more like chaos. In moments like these, power does not seize control, it is invited. The first emperor understood this better than anyone. He did not force Rome into submission. He offered calm, he spoke softly, he promised order, and Rome listened. From that moment on, the position of emperor became a paradox. It was absolute power pretending to be restraint, authority dressed as service, control disguised as responsibility. Over time, each emperor inherited not only power but suspicion. The throne was never stable. Loyalty was temporary, praise was often exaggerated, and criticism was whispered in corners. To survive, emperors learned to watch everyone, to trust no one completely. Some adapted, others unraveled. As you listen, let your thoughts slow down. There is no need to remember names or dates right now. Let the atmosphere settle first. Imagine the steady rhythm of footsteps in a palace corridor, the soft rustle of fabric, the distant sound of the city breathing. Rome at night was not silent, but it was thoughtful. There is a quiet humor in all of this. The most powerful men in the ancient world spent their lives worrying about gossip, rumors, and who might be sharpening a knife behind a smile. Power promised certainty, yet delivered constant doubt. In that contradiction lies the strange charm of Roman history. By the end of this journey, you may notice something familiar. The emperors of Rome struggled with the same fears that follow power in every era. Fear of losing control, fear of being replaced, fear of being remembered for the wrong reasons. Rome may feel distant, but its lessons are close. So take a slow breath. Let the weight of marble and memory settle gently. We are about to step into the lives of men who ruled an empire and still could not escape themselves. The story begins not with a battle, but with a choice. The choice to trade chaos for control. And once that choice was made, Rome would never truly sleep again. Octavian did not look like someone destined to rule the world. He was young, frequently ill, and far from the image of a heroic warrior that Rome usually admired. If you placed him next to a seasoned general, you might have mistaken him for an anxious student who had wandered into the wrong room. And yet, this quiet and unimpressive young man would become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. His rise was not loud, it was patient, almost polite. In his early years, Octavian was not respected for his strength. He was respected for his name. He was the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, a man whose shadow stretched long and dark across Roman politics. This inheritance was both a gift and a danger. It opened doors, but it also painted a target on his back. Rome at that time was not a safe place for young men with famous names. Civil war was not a dramatic event. It was a daily condition. Octavian learned quickly that survival in Rome required more than courage. It required restraint. While others rushed forward with swords and speeches, he stepped back and observed. He watched alliances form and collapse. He learned who spoke loudly and who listened carefully. This was not weakness. It was strategy. In a city where ambition often led to early funerals, patience became a powerful weapon. Unlike many of his rivals, Octavian did not try to appear larger than life. He did not boast of his victories. He did not pretend to be fearless. Instead, he allowed others to underestimate him. This turned out to be extremely useful. When people underestimate you, they make mistakes in front of you. Rome was full of such mistakes. The civil wars that followed Caesar's death were brutal and exhausting. Armies clashed, friends betrayed each other, power shifted constantly. Many men believed the control could be seized through force alone. Octavian believed something else. He believed that control could be assembled slowly, piece by piece, like a puzzle that only made sense once it was complete. He aligned himself with stronger figures when necessary. He stepped aside when confrontation would cost too much. He waited while others destroyed themselves. This was not cowardice. It was discipline. In a strange way, Octavian treated power like a long-term investment. No sudden moves, no emotional decisions, just steady accumulation. Over time, this approach paid off. Rivals disappeared. Alliances shifted in his favor. The chaos of war left Rome desperate for calm. People were tired of uncertainty. They did not want speeches about freedom anymore. They wanted silence. They wanted stability. They wanted someone who could make decisions without constantly spilling blood in the streets. Octavian understood this mood perfectly. He did not announce himself as a ruler. He did not demand loyalty. He presented himself as a solution. He spoke of restoring order, of respecting traditions, of ending the cycle of violence. Rome listened because Rome was exhausted. What makes this moment fascinating is how carefully Octavian avoided obvious domination. He refused the title of king. He rejected excessive honors in public. He behaved like a servant of the state rather than its master. This behavior was disarming. It made people comfortable. And comfort is often the first step towards surrender. Behind this modest appearance, however, Octavian was methodically securing every source of real power. He gained control of the army. He influenced laws. He managed finances. None of this was done abruptly. Each step was justified as temporary, necessary, sensible. Over time, temporary arrangements became permanent realities. There is a quiet irony here. Rome feared kings, yet it slowly handed everything that mattered to one man. Not because he demanded it, but because he seemed so reasonable. Octavian never forced Rome to kneel. Rome sat down on its own. Eventually, the Senate granted him a new name, Augustus, revered, majestic. It was a title, not a crown, and that distinction mattered deeply. Augustus was now more than a citizen, but officially still just a citizen. This delicate balance allowed him to rule without openly ruling. It was a masterpiece of political theater. Despite his success, Augustus did not live a peaceful life. Power came with constant vigilance. Trust was dangerous. Family relationships were strained. He ruled an empire, but he never relaxed completely. Even the most carefully constructed authority requires maintenance. There is something quietly amusing about this. The man who controlled the Roman world did so by appearing harmless. He conquered not by shouting, but by waiting. Augustus teaches us that the most enduring power does not rush. It observes. It adapts. And sometimes it wins simply by outlasting everyone else. As Rome settled into this new reality, the age of emperors had begun, not with a roar, but with a sigh of relief. And in that sigh, the Republic quietly fell asleep, never fully waking again. Augustus did not change Rome by announcing a revolution. He changed it by rearranging the furniture while everyone was tired and not paying close attention. When the city finally looked different, no one could remember exactly when it happened. This was his greatest talent. He made transformation feel like rest. After years of civil war, Rome was exhausted. Not the dramatic kind of exhaustion that demands applause, but the dull kind that makes people crave routine. Citizens wanted mornings without rumors and nights without fear. Augustus understood this mood deeply. He did not promise greatness, he promised calm. In a city addicted to chaos, calm felt like luxury. One of his most careful decisions was what he refused to be called. He never accepted the title of king. That word carried too much historical trauma. Kings had been expelled long ago, and the memory still made Romans uncomfortable. Augustus respected that discomfort, or at least he pretended to. Instead, he used titles that sounded modest and familiar: first citizen, protector, servant of the state. These phrases were soothing, they felt safe. They allowed people to believe that nothing essential had changed. Behind this gentle language, however, power was quietly consolidating. Augustus took command of the army but framed it as a temporary necessity. Someone had to ensure peace. He influenced the laws, but insisted it was for stability. He oversaw finances but claimed it was only to restore order after chaos. Each step made sense on its own. Together, they formed absolute control. This is where the humor quietly enters the story. Rome believed it was avoiding tyranny by trusting someone who seemed reasonable. Augustus did not shout orders or wear extravagant clothing. He dressed simply. He spoke calmly. He listened. And while everyone was relaxed, he held all the keys. The Senate continued to meet. Debates continued. Votes were cast. From the outside, the Republic appeared alive. Inside, however, its heartbeat had slowed. Senators knew where real authority lived. They spoke freely when it was safe and carefully when it was not. No one needed to say the word fear out loud. It was understood. Fear in this system was not dramatic. It was subtle. It was polite. It arrived quietly and stayed forever. Augustus mastered the art of invisible pressure. He rarely punished publicly. When he did, it felt justified, necessary, regrettable, but unavoidable. Most of the time, punishment did not need to happen. The possibility was enough. People adjusted their behavior without being asked. This is perhaps the most effective form of control, when authority does not need to raise its voice. Even the army was managed with restraint. Soldiers were loyal not only because they were paid, but because Augustus made loyalty feel sensible. He avoided reckless campaigns. He avoided unnecessary risks. Peace became a habit, and habits are difficult to break. What makes this phase of his rule so fascinating is how carefully he balanced visibility and distance. Augustus was present, but not overwhelming. He allowed traditions to continue. He honored old institutions. He respected ceremonies. Rome felt familiar, even as it was fundamentally changing. People went to sleep thinking they still lived in a republic. They woke up under an empire and felt strangely comfortable. Of course, this comfort came at a price. Augustus lived under constant observation. Control requires attention. Attention requires energy. He trusted few people completely. Even family relationships were shaped by caution. Power did not free him. It confined him. The ruler of the world lived carefully, measuring words and gestures like a man walking on thin ice. There is a quiet irony in this. Augustus achieved what generations before him could not. He ended chaos. He stabilized Rome. He created a system that would last for centuries. And yet, he never truly rested. Control demands vigilance. The moment you relax, it begins to slip. From the outside, his reign looked peaceful. From the inside, it was carefully maintained silence. Augustus understood that people do not always resist control. Often, they welcome it, especially when it arrives gently and promises to make life quieter. As his system settled into place, Rome adjusted. Children grew up knowing only this version of authority. The idea of a world without an emperor became abstract, distant, almost inconvenient. Augustus had not just taken power, he had normalized it. This is the legacy he left behind. Not statues or monuments, but habits, expectations, a new way of thinking about leadership. Future emperors would inherit this structure along with its dangers. They would learn that ruling Rome meant balancing fear and reassurance, visibility and distance, authority and performance. Augustus never wore a crown. He never called himself king. And yet, he reshaped the world more completely than any monarch before him. He proved that the most enduring power does not arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, sits down, and stays. As Rome drifted into this new rhythm, one truth became clear. The Republic had not been overthrown. It had been gently tucked into bed, and Augustus stood nearby, watching carefully, making sure it did not wake up. By the time Augustus had secured control of Rome, something subtle had changed inside him. The young man who once survived by watching quietly had become a ruler who could never stop watching. Power had given him stability, but it had taken away ease. The empire was calm, yet his mind rarely was. This is the part of the story that often goes unnoticed. What it costs a person to hold everything together. From the outside, Augustus looked successful. Rome was peaceful. Roads were repaired. Laws were enforced. Trade moved smoothly. People slept better at night. But the man responsible for this calm did not enjoy the same rest. Control is not a chair you sit in. It is a posture you maintain, and maintaining it requires constant tension. Family was the first place where this tension showed itself. Augustus understood power deeply, but intimacy confused him. Trust came slowly, if it came at all. His household was never just a family. It was an extension of the state. Every relationship carried political weight. Every conversation felt measured. Love and suspicion shared the same room. His closest relatives lived under quiet pressure. Expectations were heavy. Mistakes were unforgiving. Augustus wanted order everywhere, including in private life. When that order failed, as it often does in families, his response was firm rather than gentle. Distance replaced warmth. Duty replaced affection. The empire came first. It always did. There is something quietly sad about this. The man who brought peace to millions could not create peace around his own table. Power taught him how to manage systems, not how to manage hearts. And hearts do not respond well to management. Augustus lived a long life, but not an easy one. Longevity is often mistaken for comfort. In truth, Living long with responsibility can feel like carrying a weight that grows heavier each year. He watched friends age. He watched rivals disappear. He watched younger generations grow up in a world he designed. And through it all, he remained alert. Even sleep was not a full escape. A ruler who controls everything must also imagine everything that could go wrong: betrayal, rebellion, ambition in others. Augustus trusted his structure, but he never fully trusted people. Not because he was cruel, but because he was realistic. Rome had taught him what unchecked ambition could do. There is a faint humor hidden here. Augustus achieved what most people dream of: influence, respect, stability, and yet he lived carefully, cautiously, like someone afraid to bump into his own creation. Power gave him everything except ease. As years passed, the system he built became stronger than the man himself. Rome no longer depended on his personality. It depended on his design. This was both his greatest success and his quiet tragedy. When control becomes institutional, it no longer listens to the individual who created it. Augustus understood this, even if he never said it aloud. He knew that future rulers would inherit not only authority, but pressure. They would inherit expectations they might not be able to meet. The structure he built was efficient, but it was also unforgiving. It demanded competence. It punished weakness. It amplified fear. In this sense, Augustus' legacy was not just peace. It was tension passed forward through generations. The empire would survive, but many emperors would struggle inside it. The calm Augustus created came with invisible strings. Once Rome accepted this form of control, it could not easily imagine another. There is something deeply human about this outcome. We often solve one problem by creating another. Augustus solved chaos. He solved civil war. He solved uncertainty. But in doing so, he created a system where one person carried immense pressure at all times. The role of emperor was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to function. As Augustus aged, he became less visible, but never absent. Even in retreat, his presence was felt. His decisions echoed. His silence mattered. He had become part of the machinery he built. The man and the system were no longer separate. When he finally approached the end of his life, Rome was stable. That alone was an extraordinary achievement. Yet stability does not guarantee happiness. It guarantees continuity. Augustus ensured that Rome would continue. Whether its rulers would thrive was another question entirely. There is no dramatic collapse here, no sudden regret, just a quiet realization. Control demands sacrifice. The more complete the control, the greater the sacrifice becomes. Augustus paid with intimacy, with ease, with trust. And still, he would likely make the same choices again. Because in a world shaped by chaos, calm feels worth any price. Rome slept better because Augustus stayed awake. As his chapter closes, one truth remains. He did not merely rule an empire. He redefined what power looked like: quiet, persistent, exhausting. And once Rome learned this shape of authority, it could never quite unlearn it. Tiberius was not supposed to be emperor, at least not in the way people imagine ambition. He did not wake up dreaming of power or practicing speeches in front of a mirror. If anything, he seemed far more comfortable following orders than giving them. He was a soldier by temperament, serious, disciplined, and quietly competent. In another life, He might have spent his days marching with legions and his nights sleeping soundly under a tent. Rome, however, had other plans. From an early age, Tiberius lived under expectations that never quite fit him. He was capable and intelligent, but he lacked charm. He did not enjoy public admiration. Crowds made him uncomfortable. Politics felt like a performance he did not want to rehearse. While others thrived on applause, Tiberius preferred distance and silence. This did not make him weak, it made him different. Unfortunately for him, Rome rarely rewarded difference. His relationship with Augustus was complicated and never warm. Augustus respected Tiberius' abilities as a general, but affection was scarce. The emperor had other preferences, other hopes for succession, and Tiberius knew it. Being the backup plan is never pleasant, especially when the plan becomes permanent. When fate removed other options, Tiberius found himself standing where he never wanted to stand. When Augustus died, Rome looked to Tiberius not with excitement, but with cautious acceptance. He was experienced, he was reliable, he was not inspiring. And perhaps that was the point. After decades of transformation, Rome did not want another architect. It wanted maintenance, it wanted someone who would keep things running without surprises. Tiberius accepted the role with visible reluctance. He hesitated, he delayed, he questioned whether he should rule at all. Some interpreted this as humility, others suspected manipulation. In truth, it was probably genuine discomfort. Power felt heavy to him, not thrilling. He understood its dangers too well. Once in control, Tiberius ruled carefully. He respected institutions, he avoided dramatic reforms, he trusted systems more than people. His military background shaped his leadership. Order mattered, discipline mattered. Emotional displays did not. Rome under Tiberius was stable, but not joyful. Efficient, but tense. He did not seek popularity. In fact, he seemed indifferent to it. This alone made many Romans uneasy. They were used to leaders who wanted to be loved or feared. Tiberius wanted neither. He wanted to be left alone. This desire would define his reign more than any policy. The Senate quickly sensed his distance. Meetings felt colder, conversations became cautious. Tiberius listened more than he spoke, which made people nervous. Silence in power is unsettling. It forces others to fill the gap with their own fears. Over time, senators began to imagine threats that may or may not have existed. Suspicion grew quietly, like dust, in an unused room. Tiberius did not enjoy the rituals of authority. Public ceremonies drained him. Praise embarrassed him. Criticism irritated him. Rome expected its emperor to perform confidence. Tiberius performed restraint. The mismatch created discomfort on both sides. There is a quiet humor in this arrangement. Rome finally achieved stability and handed it to a man who would have preferred retirement. The most powerful position in the world was occupied by someone who treated it like an obligation rather than a reward. If enthusiasm were required for the job, Tiberius would have failed the interview. As the years passed, this emotional distance deepened. Tiberius withdrew further physically and mentally. He trusted fewer people, he delegated authority but monitored it closely. Control became something to be maintained from afar. This suited his temperament, but it widened the gap between ruler and ruled. His reign teaches a subtle lesson. Power does not always corrupt through excess. Sometimes it corrodes through isolation. Tiberius did not abuse authority out of pleasure. He endured it out of duty. Yet endurance has its limits. Without connection, authority becomes suspicion. Without trust, silence becomes fear. Rome remained orderly but uneasy. The machinery Augustus built continued to function, but the warmth was gone. Tiberius maintained the empire, but he did not embrace it. And the empire, sensing this, responded with quiet anxiety. As night settles over Rome, imagine Tiberius not as a tyrant, but as a tired man sitting alone, listening to reports he does not enjoy reading. Outside, the city breathes steadily. Inside, its ruler wonders how he ended up here. This is the beginning of his story. A reign shaped not by desire, but by reluctance. At some point during his reign, Tiberius discovered a solution to a problem he never enjoyed solving. If Rome made him uncomfortable, he could simply step away from Rome. This was not a dramatic decision. It did not involve speeches or announcements. It felt more like a slow retreat. One step back, then another, until distance became routine. Ruling from afar suited Tiberius' temperament. He believed that power did not require constant visibility. Orders could be sent, reports could be read, decisions could be made without standing in crowded halls or enduring endless conversations. From his perspective, this was efficiency. From Rome's perspective, it was unsettling. An emperor who does not show himself invites imagination. Senators began to wonder what Tiberius was thinking, or worse, what he might be suspecting. Silence from the top is rarely neutral. It feels like judgment waiting to happen. Tiberius did not withdraw because he wanted luxury. He withdrew because proximity felt dangerous. Too many faces, too many smiles that could hide resentment. He had spent a lifetime watching ambition destroy families and governments. Now he was surrounded by people who benefited from his position and might also benefit from his absence. This is where power began to change shape inside him. Authority no longer felt like responsibility. It felt like vulnerability. Every letter carried potential betrayal. Every report hinted at hidden motives. The farther he went from Rome, the closer suspicion followed. From a distance, Tiberius began to rely heavily on information. Information became safety. Names, accusations, whispers. What began as caution slowly became obsession. He wanted to know who spoke against him, who hesitated too much. Silence became suspicious. Loyalty became temporary. The Senate felt this shift immediately. Sessions grew tense. Senators measured their words carefully. Praise became exaggerated. Criticism vanished completely. Ironically, this made things worse. When no one dares to speak honestly, even a cautious ruler begins to imagine danger everywhere. Tiberius did not demand fear. He simply allowed it to grow. Accusations of disloyalty increased. Investigations multiplied. Trials became common. Some were justified. Others were driven by ambition among senators who learned that accusing someone else was safer than remaining neutral. The Senate transformed quietly. It stopped being a place of debate and became a stage for survival. Members watched each other closely. Alliances shifted constantly. Everyone understood the rules, though no one stated them openly. Say the correct things. Avoid attention. Never appear too confident. Never appear too hesitant. There is a strange irony in all this. Tiberius wanted peace and distance. Instead, he created anxiety and closeness of a different kind. Rome became a city where people watched each other more than they watched the emperor. Fear did not flow downward alone. it spread sideways. From his retreat, Tiberius received endless reports of offenses and conspiracies. Some were real, many were exaggerated, a few were invented entirely. Sorting truth from ambition became exhausting, and exhaustion does not improve judgment. This period reveals something deeply human about power. When control is maintained through suspicion, it consumes attention. The mind no longer rests. Every quiet moment invites doubt. Every delay feels intentional. Trust becomes a risk rather than a foundation. There is a faint humor hidden in this tragedy. The man who wanted solitude ended up mentally surrounded by enemies, many of whom existed only in rumor. The emperor who avoided crowds could not escape imagined threats. Distance did not bring peace. It amplified fear. Meanwhile, Rome continued functioning. Markets opened, streets filled. Life moved on. Ordinary citizens adapted to the atmosphere without fully understanding it. Fear at the top trickles down slowly. It becomes habit. People learn to speak less, to listen more, to avoid standing out. Tiberius never intended to rule through terror. He believed he was protecting stability. And perhaps, in his own way, he was. The empire did not collapse. The borders held. Administration continued. But something intangible was lost. Confidence. Ease. The feeling that authority was predictable. As nights passed in his retreat, Tiberius read reports by lamplight. Names blurred together. Accusations repeated themselves. Loyalty became a fragile word. He was emperor of the world, yet increasingly alone with his thoughts. This is how power consumes the mind. Not with excitement, but with vigilance. Not with pleasure, but with constant readiness. Tiberius did not fall into madness. He drifted into caution so deep that it resembled fear. Rome sensed this change, even if it could not name it. The emperor was distant. The laws were sharp. Silence filled the gaps. The system Augustus built continued to operate, but its tone had shifted. As this chapter unfolds, remember that Tiberius' story is not one of sudden cruelty. It is one of slow isolation. A ruler who stepped back to feel safer and discovered that distance does not protect the mind. It only gives it more room to worry. Eventually, distance was no longer enough. Tiberius did not just step away from Rome, he removed himself from it entirely. The city that once demanded his presence now felt like an exhausting conversation he no longer wished to continue. So he chose an island. Capri, quiet, isolated, surrounded by water that acted like a natural barrier between him and expectation. At first, this retreat seemed sensible. Capri offered peace, routine, and control over who could approach. Messages arrived by boat. Decisions were made from a distance. The emperor could finally breathe. Or so he thought. But isolation has a way of changing shape over time. What begins as rest slowly turns into detachment. Detachment becomes habit, and habit, when left unchecked, becomes personality. On Capri, Tiberius lived without the daily reminders that tempered power. There were no Senate sessions to endure, no public appearances to maintain, no crowds to observe his reactions. Without these limits, his inner world expanded. Unfortunately, it expanded in directions that offered little comfort. Rumors soon followed him across the water. Rome loves stories, especially when information is scarce. Whispers spread about strange behavior, excess, and cruelty. Some of these tales were exaggerated, Others were invented entirely. A few may have contained fragments of truth. What matters most is not whether the rumors were accurate, but that Tiberius no longer seemed interested in correcting them. Silence became his response to everything. Silence toward criticism, silence toward suspicion, silence toward the city he ruled. In Rome, silence from the emperor felt like condemnation. People filled the gap with fear. From his island, Tiberius relied even more heavily on reports. Accusations multiplied, informants competed for attention. Loyalty became a performance. To prove devotion, people denounced others. This created a cycle that fed itself. The more accusations arrived, the more suspicious Tiberius became. The more suspicious he became, the more accusations followed. This is how isolation erodes judgment. Without regular human contact, ideas lose proportion. Minor concerns feel enormous. Small threats feel existential. Trust evaporates. There's a bleak irony here. Tiberius retreated to Capri to escape anxiety. Instead, he built a mental world where anxiety ruled completely. The emperor, who avoided Rome to feel safer, ended up surrounded by invisible enemies. Meanwhile, the Senate struggled. With the emperor absent, power flowed through intermediaries. Some wielded it carefully, others exploited it. Decisions felt distant and impersonal. Fear was no longer tied to a face. It became abstract, which made it harder to confront and easier to spread. Rome did not collapse during this period. Life continued. People adapted. That is what societies do. But something in the relationship between ruler and ruled broke quietly. Authority became faceless. Justice felt unpredictable. Stability remained, but trust did not. On Capri, Tiberius aged. His world narrowed. The sea that once felt protective now felt confining. He had isolated himself not just from Rome, but from correction. No one nearby could challenge his assumptions. No one could tell him he was wrong without risk. There is a subtle humor in the situation, though it is the kind that makes you exhale rather than laugh. The ruler of the known world spent his final years hiding from it. Power had promised control. It delivered retreat. As his health declined, so did his connection to reality. The emperor, who once managed systems with discipline, now relied on suspicion as his primary guide. Every message felt dangerous. Every delay felt intentional. He trusted almost no one. When death finally approached, it did not come with ceremony. There was no reconciliation with Rome, no dramatic return. Tiberius died distant physically and emotionally. The city reacted not with grief, but with relief. That alone speaks volumes. Rome had endured his reign. It had survived his absence. And when he was gone, it moved on quickly. The machine Augustus built did not pause. It simply accepted a new operator. Tiberius' story ends not with a fall, but with a fade. A gradual withdrawal from connection, from confidence, from clarity. He did not lose power in a single moment. He lost himself over time. This is the final lesson of his reign. Power without connection becomes distortion. Distance without trust becomes fear. Tiberius did not intend to rule through terror or paranoia. He arrived there quietly, one careful step at a time. As night settles over Rome once more, imagine the island of Capri in darkness, waves moving steadily against stone, a palace silent except for the thoughts of a man who ruled millions yet could not escape his own mind. This is how his chapter closes, not with noise but with isolation complete. Caligula entered the world already surrounded by tension. His childhood was not filled with ordinary play or quiet learning. It unfolded inside military camps and imperial corridors where loyalty shifted quickly and danger lingered without warning. He learned early that smiles could hide fear and that silence could mean survival. For a child, this environment shaped instincts before it shaped dreams. As a boy, Caligula was often seen among soldiers. He wore small boots that amused the legions, earning him a nickname that sounded playful and harmless. People laughed when they saw him. Laughter felt safe. It created the illusion that nothing was wrong. But behind the humor was a child watching adults disappear, fall from favor, or meet sudden ends. The lesson was subtle but powerful. Attention could protect you. Being liked could keep you alive. When his family suffered political downfall, Caligula learned another lesson. Power was fragile. Love from the crowd did not always extend to protection within the palace. He grew up alert, observant, and emotionally guarded. Survival required adaptation. He became good at reading rooms. He learned when to speak and when to remain quiet. These skills would later serve him well, though not always in healthy ways. As he matured, Caligula carried the memory of loss alongside a hunger for safety. He had seen what happened to those who lacked protection. So when the opportunity came for him to rise, he did not hesitate. Power offered security. Authority promised control. And after years of fear, control felt comforting. When Caligula became emperor, Rome reacted with enthusiasm. He was young, energetic, and familiar. People remembered the child among the soldiers. They remembered the smile. They wanted hope after years of distance and suspicion under the previous reign. Caligula seemed approachable. He waved, he spoke kindly, he appeared generous. The city welcomed him with genuine excitement. This early period of his rule felt almost joyful. He canceled unpopular taxes, he honored public games, he spoke warmly to the people. Rome relaxed. After years of tension, the empire exhaled. It felt as though the weight of suspicion had been lifted. Caligula was not distant. He was present. He listened, he laughed, and Rome loved him for it. There is something quietly ironic about this moment. Caligula did exactly what Rome wanted. He performed warmth. He embodied accessibility. He offered the comfort of familiarity. And yet, beneath this surface, the seeds of imbalance were already planted. Power arrived quickly, perhaps too quickly, for someone shaped by constant fear. For Caligula, love from the crowd was intoxicating. It felt like safety amplified. Every cheer reinforced the belief that attention equaled security. Applause became reassurance. Admiration became armor. The emperor, who once survived by being liked, now ruled by being adored. This is where the pace of his story accelerates. Unlike rulers who grew into power slowly, Caligula was surrounded by affirmation almost immediately. There was little resistance, few reminders of limits. Authority flowed toward him without obstacles. For a young man with deep emotional scars, this was overwhelming. The city projected its hopes onto him. Caligula projected his need for validation back onto the city. It was a mutual exchange, comfortable at first, but unstable beneath the surface. When expectations rise faster than judgment, imbalance follows. There is a subtle humor in the way Rome embraced him. The people wanted relief from fear, and they chose someone who had lived in fear his entire life. They wanted calm, and they crowned someone whose inner world had rarely known it. Neither side recognized the mismatch at the time. Caligula's early reign shows how quickly admiration can replace scrutiny. When a leader feels good, people assume he is good. When he smiles, they relax. When he listens, they trust. Rome wanted to believe that the nightmare of suspicion was over. Caligula seemed to promise that simply by existing. But power given too easily often arrives without guidance. No one told Caligula how to slow down. No one reminded him that affection has limits. The applause continued. The authority expanded. And the young emperor learned a dangerous lesson. If being loved feels good, being worshipped might feel even better. As night settles over Rome during these early months, imagine the city glowing with optimism. Lamps lit, crowds gathered, an emperor young enough to believe that love could last forever. Caligula stood at the center of this warmth, smiling, unaware that the very thing protecting him was also reshaping him. This is how his story begins. Not with cruelty, not with madness, but with approval, with affection, with a child who had learned to survive by being liked, now holding the most powerful position in the world. Rome cheered. Caligula listened. And somewhere inside him, the idea formed that love could be commanded as easily as fear. As the cheers continued and the warmth of approval settled around him, something inside Caligula began to shift. The love he once needed for survival now surrounded him without effort. It came automatically. Wherever he went, eyes followed, voices softened, laughter waited for his reaction. This constant attention was not questioned. It was enjoyed. At first, Caligula treated admiration like a friendly companion. He smiled often, he spoke generously, he seemed eager to please. But absolute authority has a peculiar effect on the mind. When no one contradicts you, your thoughts echo back unchanged. Over time, those echoes grow louder. Caligula began to test the edges of his influence. Small gestures came first. Unexpected decisions, public displays that felt theatrical rather than necessary. The crowd laughed nervously, then it laughed more freely. The emperor was entertaining, and entertainment felt harmless. What no one noticed at first was that power had stopped receiving feedback. Approval flowed in one direction only. Caligula did not hear limits. He heard applause. And applause is not guidance. It is encouragement without instruction. With no resistance, imagination expanded. Caligula began to treat authority as a stage. Actions no longer needed justification. They needed reaction. Surprise became currency. The more unpredictable he was, the more attention he commanded. Attention had once protected him. Now it defined him. Fear entered the picture quietly, not as a threat, but as a tone. People adjusted their behavior instinctively. Laughter arrived faster, praise grew louder, silence became rare. This was not ordered, it was learned. Rome adapted the way people always do when unpredictability rules. Carefully. Caligula noticed this adaptation. He noticed how a raised eyebrow changed a room, how a pause could freeze conversation. This awareness brought a new sensation, control. Not the kind written in laws, but the kind felt immediately. The kind that responds to mood rather than rules. This is where entertainment and fear began to blend. Caligula enjoyed reactions. Shock, confusion, relief when nothing happened. Tension followed by release. Authority became a performance, and the city became an audience that did not know when the show would end. There is a quiet irony here. Caligula wanted to be loved, but love without boundaries transforms quickly. When admiration replaces accountability, power becomes self-referential. It no longer asks whether something should be done, it asks whether it can be done. Punishment became irregular, sometimes severe, sometimes absent. There was no pattern to rely on. This unpredictability kept people alert. It kept them watching. Fear became a background noise, not overwhelming but constant, like a low hum that never stops. Caligula did not need to issue threats. His mood was enough. The possibility of consequence did the work. This kind of authority is efficient. It saves effort. It transfers responsibility onto everyone else to anticipate and adjust. The city changed in subtle ways. Conversation shortened. Humor became cautious. Loyalty became exaggerated. People competed to appear agreeable. Rome had experienced fear before, but this was different. This fear did not come from rules or laws. It came from personality. From Caligula's perspective, this felt powerful. The world responded instantly. He had never experienced such clarity. His will shaped reality without delay. For someone raised in uncertainty, this immediacy felt intoxicating. There is something quietly amusing in how quickly this happened. Rome spent generations trying to prevent absolute authority, only to hand it to a young man who treated it like an interactive experiment. No manuals, no warnings, just curiosity and applause. Caligula did not see himself as cruel. He saw himself as expressive, creative, alive. He believed control should feel dynamic, not boring. Stability felt dull. Reaction felt exciting. In this mindset, disruption became entertainment. The city complied, not because it agreed, but because it adapted. People learned to read the emperor's mood the way sailors read the sea. Calm did not mean safety. It meant waiting. This period of his rule was not chaos in the streets. Life continued, markets opened, roads remained busy. But tension lived just beneath the surface. The empire was functioning, but alert. As night fell over Rome, lamps flickered and voices lowered. Somewhere in the palace, Caligula planned his next gesture. Somewhere in the city, people prepared to respond. Authority had become a shared performance, though only one person chose the script. This is the moment when power crossed a quiet line. It stopped listening. It began entertaining itself. And once that happens, restraint no longer feels necessary. Caligula did not change overnight. He drifted, step by step, reaction by reaction. The beloved ruler learned that fear could be just as engaging as affection. And Rome, having taught him to enjoy applause, now waited to see what he would do with silence. By the time Caligula reached the later part of his reign, Rome had learned a new skill: waiting. Not hopeful waiting, but cautious waiting. The kind where people listen carefully before speaking and smile before being asked. The city still functioned, but it did so quietly, like someone moving through a room where sleep is fragile. Caligula no longer needed applause to feel powerful. He had discovered something more efficient: anticipation. People adjusted themselves before he entered a space. They laughed early, they praised often, they avoided surprise. This constant awareness followed him everywhere, and it followed everyone else even when he was not present. Inside the palace, tension thickened. Guards watched each other as closely as they watched the halls. Servants learned when to disappear. Silence became an art. The emperor's moods shifted quickly, and no one wanted to be caught on the wrong side of a moment. For Caligula, this atmosphere felt like confirmation. The world responded instantly to him. No delay, no debate. For someone who had once lived under uncertainty, this felt like control perfected. He had no reason to believe it would end. But fear has a limit. When unpredictability replaces order, even those closest to power begin to feel unsafe. Loyalty born of admiration fades faster than loyalty born of stability. The palace was full of people who depended on routine, and Caligula had removed it entirely. Whispers began where whispers always begin: quiet corners, short glances, conversations that ended too quickly. No one spoke openly, everyone listened. The palace did not feel rebellious, it felt tired. There is a quiet irony in what followed. Caligula believed that fear made him untouchable. In reality, it made him isolated. Protection depends on trust, and trust had quietly evaporated. Those closest to him did not feel loyal, they felt trapped. The decision was not dramatic. It was practical, a calculation rather than an explosion of anger. Fear had reached a point where removal felt safer than endurance. The palace, like the city, adapted. One night, the tension finally broke, not with thunder or spectacle, but with movement through familiar corridors. The same halls that had echoed with footsteps now carried a different purpose. There was no announcement, no warning, just action. Caligula did not see it coming. Absolute authority rarely does. It assumes continuity. It assumes that control extends to tomorrow. In that moment, the performance ended. The assassination was swift, confined, almost quiet. A life shaped by reaction ended without an audience. The palace, which had held its breath for months, finally released it. Rome woke to the news, not with mourning, but with relief. This response speaks volumes. There were no grand laments, no deep confusion. The city did not fall into chaos. It adjusted, as it always did. People went about their routines with a lighter step. Conversations felt easier. Laughter returned slowly, cautiously at first, then more naturally. Fear does not vanish instantly, but it loosens when the source disappears. The Senate moved quickly. Order was restored. The machinery of the empire continued without hesitation. Caligula had not been the system. He had been a presence within it. Once removed, the structure remained. There is something quietly instructive in this ending. Power that relies on personality rather than predictability creates instability, not strength. Fear can command attention, but it cannot sustain loyalty. Caligula's story closes not with legacy, but with absence. He did not leave behind reforms or stability. He left behind a memory, a caution, a shared exhale. Rome did not celebrate his death loudly. It simply moved on. That silence is perhaps the most telling response of all. As night settles once more over the city, imagine the palace halls empty and still. Lamps burn softly. Guards stand relaxed for the first time in years. Somewhere in the distance, Rome breathes evenly again. This was the inevitable end of unchecked authority. Not because rebellion demanded it, but because fear eventually exhausts those who carry it. Caligula taught Rome a lesson it would remember for generations. Power without limits does not expand forever. It collapses inward. And with that collapse, the city returned to something it understood well: adaptation, survival, quiet continuation. The palace slept, Rome rested, and history turned the page without hesitation. Claudius spent most of his life doing something very few people master. He survived by being underestimated. In a world where attention often led to danger, being ignored was a form of protection. While others competed for influence, Claudius quietly stayed out of sight. Not because he lacked awareness, but because he understood the environment he lived in. From a young age, Claudius was different. His speech was slow and uneven, his movements awkward, his posture uncertain. In a society that admired strength, confidence, and sharp words, these traits became labels. People assumed weakness. Some assumed stupidity. Others simply dismissed him as irrelevant. Claudius learned early that expectations shape reality. When people expect little from you, they rarely watch you closely. Inside his family, this perception followed him everywhere. Relatives spoke over him. Advisors ignored him. Decisions were made without consulting him. While this exclusion might seem cruel, it came with an unexpected benefit. Claudius was not seen as a threat. And in Roman politics, not being a threat was often the safest position imaginable. He watched powerful family members rise and fall. He saw confidence punished and ambition exposed. He saw clever men speak too boldly and disappear shortly after. Claudius learned from these patterns without drawing attention to himself. Observation became his quiet education. There is something gently ironic about this stage of his life. The man later trusted with the empire was once trusted with almost nothing. He was allowed to live precisely because no one believed he mattered. In a city shaped by fear, irrelevance could feel like freedom. Claudius did not retreat into bitterness. Instead, he turned inward. He read, he studied history, he paid attention to systems rather than personalities. While others sought influence, he sought understanding. This was not ambition disguised as patience. It was adaptation. His physical challenges shaped his demeanor, but they did not define his intelligence. Claudius developed a thoughtful mind. He understood how institutions worked. He understood how power shifted. He understood how quickly fortune could change. Most importantly, he understood how dangerous it was to be seen. For decades, Claudius lived on the margins of power. He attended gatherings without being noticed. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, people were surprised to hear clarity where they expected confusion. These moments were quickly forgotten. The image of weakness was too convenient to challenge. Then one day, the unimaginable happened. Chaos struck the palace. Authority vanished abruptly. In the confusion that followed, soldiers searched for stability. Not inspiration, not brilliance, stability. They found Claudius hiding, or perhaps resting quietly. Accounts differ, but the image remains striking. A man who had spent his life avoiding attention suddenly became the safest option, not because he was strong, but because he was familiar and unthreatening. The decision to elevate Claudius was not poetic. It was practical. The empire needed continuity. Claudius was present. He was alive. He was connected to the ruling family, and most importantly, he had no reputation for ambition. In that moment, modesty felt like security. Claudius did not seize power. Power landed on him unexpectedly. The transition was awkward. The new emperor did not radiate confidence. He did not deliver grand speeches. He looked uncertain, and Rome, tired of drama, accepted this uncertainty with surprising calm. There is a quiet humor in imagining the reactions across the city. The man everyone had dismissed now wore the imperial title. The one no one feared was suddenly in charge. It was as if Rome had chosen the least dramatic option available simply to catch its breath. Once in power, Claudius did something unexpected. He worked. He approached the role carefully. He asked questions. He relied on process rather than impulse. His reign did not begin with spectacle. It began with administration. The traits once mocked became assets. His caution prevented rash decisions. His habit of listening improved governance. His lack of theatrical confidence reduced tension. Rome adjusted to a ruler who did not dominate rooms with presence. Claudius understood his limitations and compensated for them. He delegated thoughtfully. He studied law. He respected structure. The empire functioned smoothly, not because of charisma, but because of consistency. Yet the shadow of his earlier life never fully left him. Many still doubted him. Many still whispered. Authority does not erase old impressions easily. Claudius ruled while being quietly questioned, and perhaps this kept him grounded. His survival taught Rome an unexpected lesson. Strength does not always look impressive. Competence does not always announce itself. Sometimes the most overlooked figure carries the most balance. As night settles over Rome during this phase of his rule, imagine a palace calmer than before, not silent with fear, but quiet with routine. An emperor reading documents rather than rehearsing performances. A man once dismissed, now holding responsibility carefully. Claudius did not rise because he demanded power. He rose because he endured without drawing attention. In a city exhausted by extremes, the overlooked man became the steady one. This is how his chapter begins. Not with ambition or brilliance, but with survival perfected into leadership. Once the initial surprise faded and Rome realized that the overlooked man was not leaving, daily life began to settle into something unfamiliar. Calm. Not the nervous calm of fear, but the steady calm of routine. Claudius did not rule through spectacle. He ruled through paperwork. And for Rome, this turned out to be exactly what it needed. Claudius approached power the way someone approaches a complicated household. Carefully, methodically, with lists. He did not assume he knew everything. He asked questions. He read reports slowly. He listened to advisors not because they impressed him, but because they had information. This alone marked a shift from recent memory. Administration became the center of his reign. Laws were reviewed, procedures clarified, confusion reduced. Claudius believed that stability did not come from personality, but from systems that worked even when personalities failed. Rome had spent years reacting to moods. Now it adjusted to processes. One of his most significant efforts focused on the structure of governance. Offices that had become symbolic were made functional again. Responsibilities were defined. Authority was clarified. This was not exciting work. No crowds gathered to watch reforms unfold. But the effects were felt quietly across the empire. Claudius understood that Rome was more than its capital. Provinces mattered. Distance mattered. He paid attention to regions that had long felt ignored. Roads were repaired, aqueducts maintained. Infrastructure does not inspire poetry, but it inspires movement. Goods traveled more easily. Messages arrived faster. People noticed that life felt smoother, even if they could not name why. There is something gently amusing about this phase of his rule. Rome, which once measured leadership by drama, now benefited from a man who preferred documents to speeches. Claudius did not try to appear impressive. He tried to be effective. In a city exhausted by extremes, this felt almost radical. Another quiet shift came through legal reform. Claudius believed laws should function consistently, not selectively. He paid attention to fairness not as an ideal, but as a practical necessity. When people understand the rules, they are less anxious. Anxiety had drained Rome long enough. He also expanded participation in governance beyond traditional boundaries. New citizens were recognized, new voices included. This was not done to please crowds. It was done to strengthen the system. Claudius understood that an empire held together by exclusion becomes brittle. Inclusion, even when uncomfortable, adds resilience. These decisions were not always popular among the elite. Some resented change, some resisted adjustment. Claudius did not argue loudly. He proceeded anyway. His authority did not depend on approval. It depended on continuity. What made his reign effective was not brilliance, but consistency. He showed up, he worked, he followed through. Day after day, the empire responded by functioning. Of course, Claudius was not flawless. He relied heavily on advisors and household figures. This reliance sometimes blurred judgment, but even here his intent remained practical rather than theatrical. He trusted those who handled details well. In his mind, competence mattered more than charisma. There is a subtle humor in imagining Claudius as emperor. The man once dismissed as incapable became the caretaker of Rome machinery. While others chased glory, he ensured the gears did not grind to a halt. Rome did not shine more brightly under him. It simply worked better. Citizens felt the difference in small ways. Markets operated smoothly, legal disputes moved forward, travel became easier, life lost some of its tension, people slept better without knowing exactly why. Claudius never tried to dominate attention. He allowed the empire to breathe without constantly reminding it who was in charge. Authority felt quieter, less personal, more predictable. This predictability became its own form of comfort. As years passed, Rome adjusted to this rhythm. Drama faded into memory. Routine took its place. The city learned that leadership did not always need to feel overwhelming to be effective. Claudius' reign demonstrates a lesson history often forgets. Stability is built through repetition, through unglamorous decisions, through patience. It is not announced, it is maintained. As night settles over Rome during this period, imagine lamps glowing along repaired streets, water flowing steadily through aqueducts, officials completing tasks without fear of sudden mood shifts, an emperor reading quietly rather than performing. Claudius did not transform Rome through vision or force, he sustained it through attention. In doing so, he proved that being overlooked had prepared him perfectly. The man no one expected anything from became the one who quietly delivered. His chapter continues not with applause, but with balance. And in a city that had known too much imbalance, that was enough. For all his attention to systems and order, Claudius made one quiet miscalculation. He believed that administration could protect him everywhere. It worked in courts and provinces. It worked in offices and laws, but it did not work at home. Power can organize an empire, yet still fail to manage a household. Claudius had spent much of his life being ignored, and this shaped how he valued closeness. When people finally paid attention to him, he welcomed it deeply, perhaps too deeply. He wanted loyalty, he wanted affection. He wanted to believe that family offered safety where politics did not. Inside the palace, however, family was never just family. It was proximity to power. Every relationship carried advantage. Every gesture carried calculation. Claudius understood systems, but he underestimated intimacy. He did not expect manipulation to come from those closest to him. His marriages became sources of instability rather than comfort. Partners influenced decisions quietly. Advice arrived not through official channels, but through whispers and moods. Claudius listened, he trusted. After a lifetime of dismissal, being heard felt reassuring. There is something quietly tragic here. The man who survived decades by staying unnoticed became vulnerable once he allowed himself to feel secure. Power did not soften relationships. It sharpened them. The palace filled with intrigue. Alliances formed within rooms rather than councils. Decisions were nudged rather than debated. Claudius often believed he was choosing freely, unaware of how carefully options had been arranged around him. Advisors competed for access. Family members learned how to frame requests. Influence flowed through emotion rather than merit. This was not chaos. It was subtle control. And subtle control is difficult to detect, especially for someone who values harmony. Claudius did not suspect danger easily. He preferred routine over suspicion. This preference served him well in governance, but poorly in personal matters. While he focused on maintaining stability, others focused on succession. Power invites planning, and succession invites urgency. Those near Claudius understood that the future depended on timing. Loyalty shifted quietly, promises were made, smiles concealed ambition. The emperor remained focused on work, laws, roads, administration. He believed that if the system functioned, everything else would follow. He underestimated how personal power truly is at the top. Institutions may endure, but access to the ruler determines direction. There is a faint humor in imagining Claudius at his desk, reviewing documents with care, unaware that decisions were being shaped before reaching him. He trusted the process, not realizing the process had been gently redirected. Eventually, the tension reached its quiet conclusion. Claudius' health declined. The palace grew more watchful. Care became control. Protection became confinement. The emperor, who had brought stability to Rome, found himself surrounded by concern that carried sharp edges. The end came not with spectacle, but with subtlety. No uprising, no rebellion. Just a moment when trust proved misplaced. Power could not shield him from vulnerability. Authority could not protect intimacy. When Claudius died, Rome did not fall into chaos. The system he built held. That alone speaks to his effectiveness. But his death also revealed the limit of administration. You can design laws, you can organize provinces. You cannot regulate loyalty inside a household. Rome responded with mixed emotion. There was respect, there was relief, there was recognition that stability had been preserved, even as the man who maintained it was lost. Claudius' legacy is quiet and complex. He proved that competence matters. That routine can heal a wounded empire. and also that power does not grant wisdom in every domain. As night settles over Rome at the close of his reign, imagine the palace still and dim, papers neatly arranged, systems intact. Yet the space feels empty. The man who kept everything moving is gone, undone, not by rebellion or failure, but by closeness. This is the final lesson of Claudius' story. Power can manage the world, but it cannot guarantee safety in the smallest rooms. Sometimes the greatest threat is not chaos outside, but trust within. Rome continued. The machine kept turning, and the overlooked man was remembered not for spectacle, but for balance. Nero did not step into power as a hardened ruler shaped by years of discipline. He arrived as a teenager, still learning who he was, suddenly placed at the center of an empire that expected certainty. Rome watched him closely, unsure whether to applaud or worry. Nero himself likely felt the same confusion. Authority came to him before restraint did, and that imbalance would quietly define everything that followed. In the beginning, Nero's reign felt almost gentle. Advisors handled many decisions. Policies continued without disruption. The empire ran on momentum rather than innovation. For Rome, this was comfortable. After turbulence and suspicion, calm felt like a gift. Nero smiled often. He listened politely. He seemed willing to let others guide him. The city relaxed. These early years were peaceful not because Nero was wise, but because he was uninterested. Politics bored him, meetings dragged, reports felt endless. While senators debated procedures, Nero's imagination wandered elsewhere. He preferred color, sound, and movement. He was drawn to music, performance, and the energy of an audience. Where politics felt rigid, the stage felt alive. This preference might have remained harmless if Nero's power had been limited. But absolute authority does not pause while its holder explores hobbies. Decisions waited. Responsibilities accumulated. The empire required attention even when the emperor did not feel like giving it. There is something quietly amusing about this contrast. Rome expected command and received curiosity. It expected leadership and received rehearsal. Nero did not reject his role openly. He simply drifted away from it mentally, leaving governance to those around him. At first, this arrangement worked. Experienced advisors filled the gap. Systems functioned. Nero was praised for stability he barely noticed. Approval reinforced his disinterest in responsibility. Why focus on tedious matters when the empire seemed fine without his effort? Gradually, however, Nero began to notice something else. Applause felt better than approval. Applause was immediate. Approval was abstract. When people clapped, he knew exactly what they felt. When they praised his rule, it felt distant and impersonal. The stage offered clarity. Perform, and the reaction is instant. The throne offered ambiguity. Make a decision and the results unfold slowly, tangled in consequence. For a young mind, the choice felt obvious. Nero began to invest more energy in performance. He practiced. He imagined himself not as a ruler, but as an artist. Someone admired for expression rather than authority. He wanted to be seen, not obeyed. Rome reacted with confusion, an emperor performing publicly blurred expectations. Some found it charming, others found it unsettling. Authority usually maintains distance. Nero closed it eagerly. There is a subtle irony here. Nero wanted connection, but he pursued it through control. The audience did not attend his performances freely. They attended because he was emperor. Applause was expected. Silence was dangerous. The line between admiration and obligation blurred. Still, Nero believed the reaction was genuine. The cheers felt real. The admiration felt warm. He did not question the conditions behind it. Power has a way of editing perception. As Nero's confidence on stage grew, his patience for governance shrank. Political matters felt increasingly dull. Why argue with senators when music offered joy? Why read reports when performance offered presence? Responsibility became an interruption. This shift did not happen overnight. It unfolded gradually, like a long evening where focus drifts. Nero was not cruel in these early years. He was distracted. And distraction at the top creates space for others to act. Advisors gained influence, court dynamics intensified, decisions were shaped around Nero moods. If he was pleased, matters moved smoothly. If he was bored, they stalled. Governance became emotional rather than procedural. Rome adjusted again. People learned when to speak and when to wait. Attention followed Nero interests. Resources followed his passions. The empire bent gently around the preferences of a young man discovering himself. There is something quietly sad in this image. Nero was not prepared for the weight he carried. He was given power without guidance and praise without honesty. The empire expected maturity but offered indulgence. As nights passed, imagine Nero practicing lines or melodies while reports rested untouched nearby. Lamps burned softly. The city slept. The emperor dreamed of applause. This was the calm before transformation. Nero's reign did not begin with cruelty or chaos. It began with avoidance, with a young ruler turning away from responsibility toward expression, toward a mirror rather than a map. Rome watched, uncertain. The artist on the throne was still learning which role mattered more. As Nero leaned further into performance, the distance between the throne and the stage quietly collapsed. What once felt like a pleasant distraction became the center of his identity. He no longer wanted to be respected as a ruler. He wanted to be loved as an artist. Love feels warmer than obedience. It arrives with smiles instead of silence. For Nero, this distinction mattered deeply. He began to treat admiration as proof of worth. When people clapped, he felt understood. When they hesitated, he felt ignored. Authority had always guaranteed attention, but attention without affection felt empty. So he searched for affection everywhere he could find it. The stage offered certainty. Perform well, receive praise. Perform often, receive more. Rome adjusted as it always did. Attendance at performances increased. Enthusiasm became visible. Faces brightened on cue. The audience learned the rhythm. Applause arrived on time. Compliments flowed easily. After all, the performer was also the emperor. There is a gentle irony here. Nero wanted sincerity, yet he created conditions where sincerity could not exist. Applause became mandatory. Admiration became an expectation. Silence became dangerous. Love, when required, loses its meaning. Not everyone enjoyed this transformation. Some found the performances excessive. Others felt uncomfortable with the collapsing boundaries. These reactions did not go unnoticed. Nero sensed hesitation quickly, and hesitation felt personal. Criticism, even subtle, began to irritate him. Not because it threatened his power, but because it threatened his image. The artist within him craved validation. Doubt felt like rejection, and rejection to a ruler with unlimited authority felt unnecessary. So Nero responded the way absolute power often does. He removed the discomfort, voices softened, opinions disappeared, not through loud announcements, but through quiet consequences. People learned when to approve and when to remain silent. This shift did not feel cruel to Nero. It felt corrective. If people did not understand his art, they simply needed guidance. If they resisted appreciation, they needed encouragement. Authority became a tool for shaping taste. The city grew careful again, not fearful in the old sense, but alert. Conversation shortened, humor adjusted, praise became specific and frequent. Rome was becoming an audience trained by consequence. Then came the fire. It arrived suddenly and spread quickly. Flames moved through neighborhoods while night still held the city. People ran, buildings collapsed, smoke filled the air. Rome burned, not as a symbol, but as a reality. In moments like these, leadership becomes visible. Decisions matter immediately. Presence reassures. Nero's response was complicated. He was not absent, but neither was he decisive in the way people expected. Relief efforts existed. Support followed. But the image had already formed. Rumors filled the silence left by uncertainty. Stories traveled faster than facts. Nero's image became tangled with the disaster. Not because of evidence, but because perception needed a shape. And Nero had already taught Rome to view events as performance. The fire transformed public feeling. Sympathy mixed with suspicion. Admiration weakened. Nero noticed the shift. The applause did not return as easily. Faces looked different. The audience felt restless. This wounded him deeply. He had given them art. He had shared himself. Now they hesitated. To Nero, this felt like betrayal. He responded not with reassurance, but with assertion. He needed to reassert control over the narrative. Attention had to return. Certainty had to be restored. Authority filled the space where affection faded. The image of Nero hardened. Not overnight, but steadily. Where he once sought love, he now demanded acceptance. Where he once performed for joy, he now performed for validation. There is something quietly tragic in this progression. Nero wanted connection, but he pursued it through power. Power can command applause, but it cannot create trust. And without trust, admiration turns brittle. Rome endured. It always did. Streets were rebuilt. Life resumed. But the relationship between ruler and city had changed. The artist was now inseparable from authority. Performance carried consequence. Silence carried meaning. As nights passed, Nero continued to perform. The lamps burned. The audience gathered. Applause arrived. But it felt thinner, more careful. Nero sensed this, and the sensing consumed him. The stage no longer offered escape. It demanded proof. Each performance had to be greater than the last. Each reaction had to be stronger. Satisfaction drifted further away. This is the collision between art and power. Art seeks honesty. Power reshapes honesty. Nero stood at the center of this conflict, unable to step back from either role. As Rome settled into uneasy calm, imagine Nero listening for applause that never quite satisfies. The emperor who wanted to be loved discovered that authority can force reaction, but it cannot guarantee affection. The artist on the throne had learned a painful truth. When power speaks, art struggles to be heard. And when art demands obedience, it loses its voice. As the applause thinned and the warmth faded from the city, Nero began to feel something unfamiliar. Silence. Not the peaceful kind that settles after music ends, but the uneasy kind that follows disappointment. The empire was still there. The palace still stood. The lamps still burned at night. Yet something essential was missing: the sense of being wanted. For years, Nero had measured himself through reaction. Cheers meant approval, smiles meant acceptance. Now reactions felt careful, almost cautious. People still attended performances. They still clapped, but their eyes no longer sparkled. Their enthusiasm arrived late and left early. Nero noticed everything. He always had. This change unsettled him more than any political challenge ever could. Opposition could be punished, criticism could be silenced, but indifference could not be commanded. Indifference simply existed, heavy and unmoved. The Senate grew distant, meetings felt formal and hollow, words were chosen carefully, stripped of warmth. Respect remained, but loyalty thinned. Nero sensed the shift and resented it. He had given Rome himself. How could they withdraw now? The army followed a similar path. Soldiers obeyed orders, but devotion faded. Loyalty rooted in confidence had quietly eroded. Nero authority still functioned, but it no longer inspired belief. Obedience replaced attachment. This is where isolation truly began. Nero was surrounded by people and yet deeply alone. Advisors spoke, but rarely challenged. Courtiers smiled, but avoided honesty. The palace felt full during the day and empty at night. There is something quietly ironic in this image. The emperor who wanted to be adored found himself unheard. The performer who sought connection stood on a stage that no longer responded. Fear entered the space where affection once lived, not fear of punishment, but fear of abandonment. Nero realized the control could not guarantee presence. Power could not force sincerity. As support dissolved, rumors grew louder. Plots were imagined. Betrayal felt imminent. Nero's mind circled endlessly. Who still cared? Who merely pretended? Who was waiting for the moment to step away? This mental spiral exhausted him. Performances continued, but joy disappeared. Each appearance felt like an obligation rather than an escape. Applause no longer filled him. It reminded him of what he had lost. Eventually, the truth became unavoidable. The Senate had moved on. The army no longer stood with him. The city did not hate him loudly. It simply stopped needing him. For someone like Nero, this was unbearable. He had lived for a reaction. Without it, identity collapsed. The throne offered no comfort. The stage offered no refuge. He stood between two roles that no longer wanted him. There is a quiet sadness here that history often overlooks. Nero was not defeated by enemies. He was abandoned by attention. The absence of audience hurt more deeply than any rebellion. As danger closed in, Nero fled. Not dramatically, but desperately. The emperor who once commanded the world now searched for a place to hide. The irony would have been amusing if it were not so human. In his final moments, Nero faced the silence fully. No crowds, no music, no applause, just the echo of his own thoughts. The world he tried to impress had moved on without him. His death was not heroic. It was not theatrical. It was frightened and lonely. A man who wanted to be loved chose to end his life rather than face a world that no longer watched. Rome responded with practicality. The empire did not pause. Another ruler would come, another chapter would begin. The stage was cleared. People slept that night. The city breathed. Life continued. Nero became memory. There is something gently instructive in this ending. Authority without connection feels hollow. Attention without honesty fades quickly. Nero wanted to be seen, but he never learned how to be trusted. As night settles over Rome one last time in his story, imagine an empty hall where applause once lived. The lamps dim, the echoes fade, the performance is over. Nero did not fall because he ruled poorly. He fell because he needed love more than leadership. And when the audience left, there was nothing left to hold him upright. The artist died without listeners. The emperor vanished without mourners. And Rome, quiet and practical as ever, turned the page and went to sleep. Domitian began his rule with something Rome had not felt in a long time: structure. After years of emotional rulers, dramatic gestures, and unpredictable moods, his presence felt almost refreshing. He was serious, focused, intent on control. For a city that had lived through chaos and spectacle, discipline sounded comforting. From the start, Domitian believed that authority should feel firm, not exciting, not entertaining, firm. He valued routine and precision. He believed that an empire did not need affection to survive. It needed efficiency. In this sense, Domitian saw himself less as a performer and more as a caretaker of order. He paid close attention to finances. Waste irritated him. Corruption offended his sense of structure. Money was tracked carefully. Officials were watched. Budgets mattered. Rome noticed that things began to feel tighter, but also more stable. There were fewer surprises, fewer indulgences, more rules. For some, this was a relief. The empire felt grounded again. Decisions followed logic rather than emotion. Laws were enforced more consistently. The system responded predictably. Domitian did not ask to be adored, he asked to be obeyed. There is something quietly amusing about how Rome reacted to this change. After complaining about excess and unpredictability, the city was suddenly uncomfortable with seriousness. Order feels safe in theory. In practice, it can feel restrictive. Domitian did not soften his approach. He believed that respect grew from clarity. People should know where they stood. Ambiguity bred weakness. He expected loyalty not as a feeling, but as a function. His court reflected this mindset. Ceremonies became formal. Distance between ruler and ruled increased. Domitian did not seek casual interaction. He preferred hierarchy. The emperor stood above, not among. This created a sense of stability, but also of separation. Rome had grown used to rulers who wanted something from the people: applause, love, attention. Domitian wanted none of that. He wanted compliance. At first, this worked. The army respected him, administration improved, financial discipline brought confidence. The empire felt managed rather than performed. But discipline without warmth has a side effect. It creates tension. People comply, but they do not relax. They follow rules carefully, but they stop expressing themselves freely. Silence becomes common. Conversation becomes cautious. Domitian noticed this silence and misread it. To him, quiet meant order. Fewer complaints meant success. He did not realize that people were no longer speaking because they were watching. He believed that fear was an acceptable price for stability, not cruelty, but firmness. He did not see himself as harsh. He saw himself as necessary. This belief shaped his leadership deeply. Criticism was unwelcome. Questioning felt like disobedience. Domitian valued control above comfort. And control, once prioritized, demands constant reinforcement. There is a subtle humor here that history rarely mentions. Domitian wanted Rome to function like a well-organized household, But households, when run too strictly, grow tense. People begin to whisper instead of speak. As his reign continued, Domitian monitored more closely. Officials were checked, behavior scrutinized, loyalty assessed. He did not trust easily because trust felt inefficient. Rules felt safer than relationships. Rome adjusted as it always did. People learned the boundaries. They learned when to speak and when to remain silent. They learned that safety came from invisibility. The emperor, who wanted stability, was slowly building an atmosphere of quiet anxiety. Not chaos, not panic, just a constant awareness of authority. As night settled over Rome during these early years of his rule, the city felt orderly but alert. Streets were calm, offices ran smoothly, yet laughter softened. Conversation shortened. People listened more than they spoke. Domitian ruled with intention. He believed in his vision, and in many ways it worked. The empire did not wobble, it did not collapse. It functioned. But beneath this efficiency lay a growing distance between ruler and city. Order was achieved, but comfort was lost. Control had replaced connection. This is how Domitian chapter begins. Not as a tyrant, not as a monster, but as a man who believed stability mattered more than affection. A ruler who wanted Rome to stand straight, even if it meant holding its breath. And Rome, obedient and experienced, complied quietly. As Domitian rule continued, something subtle began to shift beneath the surface of his carefully maintained order. The rules were still clear. The administration still functioned. The empire still moved on schedule. Yet the calm he valued so deeply started to feel tense rather than steady. Order, once reassuring, became something that demanded constant attention. Domitian believed that stability required awareness. Awareness required observation. And observation, over time, turned into monitoring. He did not wake up one morning deciding to mistrust everyone. He arrived there gradually, guided by the same logic that had served him before. If systems fail because people fail, then people must be watched. At first, this watching felt reasonable. Officials were evaluated, behavior was noted, loyalty was measured through consistency. Domitian told himself this was a responsibility, not suspicion. A ruler must know what is happening beneath the surface. But awareness has a way of expanding. Once you begin looking for problems, you begin finding them everywhere. Minor irregularities started to feel significant. Delays became intentional. Silence became meaningful. Domitian's mind grew busy with interpretation. The Senate felt this change almost immediately. Sessions became quieter. Speeches shortened. Senators chose words with surgical care. Not because Domitian shouted or threatened openly, but because they sensed attention. And attention from power is never neutral. Domitian rarely raised his voice. He did not need to. His presence alone shaped the room. A pause could carry weight. A look could freeze conversation. People adjusted instinctively, like guests in a house where the rules are strict but unstated. There is a faint humor hidden here. Domitian wanted efficiency, yet he created hesitation. He wanted clarity, yet he produced silence. The more he watched, the less people revealed. The less they revealed, the more he felt the need to watch. Punishments began to appear. Not dramatic, not chaotic, measured, controlled. Each one served as a reminder rather than a spectacle. Domitian believed consequences maintained order, and for a time they did. But fear is a demanding companion. It asks for reassurance through repetition. Each act of discipline makes the next one easier. Each moment of silence feels like confirmation that silence is working. The Senate slowly transformed from a place of governance into a place of survival. Members watched one another closely. Alliances grew cautious. Trust became temporary. Speaking less felt safer than speaking well. Domitian noticed the change and misunderstood it. To him, the absence of debate meant agreement. Fewer objections meant success. He believed Rome was finally aligned. In reality, Rome was adapting. It always did. People learned to stay invisible, to avoid attention, to comply without enthusiasm. Order was maintained, but connection disappeared. Inside the palace, the same pattern unfolded. Advisors filtered information carefully. Bad news softened, good news emphasized. Domitian world became increasingly narrow, shaped by what people believed was safe to share. This isolation was not physical at first, it was psychological. Domitian stood surrounded by people, yet separated from honest reaction. Power had created distance without him noticing. There is something quietly ironic in this stage of his rule. Domitian wanted control to prevent chaos. Instead, control isolated him from reality. The emperor who watched everyone was watched by no one willing to speak freely. As trust eroded, suspicion filled the gap. Domitian questioned motives. Loyalty felt fragile. He believed that enemies hid behind courtesy, that danger arrived disguised as compliance. This belief reinforced itself. The more he suspected, the more cautious others became. The more cautious they became, the more suspicious he felt. A closed loop formed, calm on the outside and restless within. Rome continued functioning. Roads were maintained. Finances remained stable. The empire did not crumble, yet something essential was missing. Ease, confidence, the sense that authority was predictable and human. Domitian did not see himself as harsh. He saw himself as vigilant. He believed vigilance was the price of order, and perhaps he was not entirely wrong. But vigilance without trust consumes the one who practices it. As nights passed, Domitian reviewed reports late into the evening. Names repeated, patterns emerged, or seemed to. The emperor who wanted Rome to feel secure could no longer feel secure himself. The city sensed his distance. It responded with quiet obedience. Not loyalty, not affection, compliance. As night settles over Rome during this phase of his reign, imagine streets calm and orderly, yet strangely muted. Laughter softer, conversation shorter, people careful not to stand out. Domitian achieved what he wanted on the surface: order, discipline, control. But beneath it, isolation grew. The emperor who believed rules could replace trust discovered that trust cannot be enforced. This is the turning point of his story, the moment when vigilance became habit. Habit became obsession, and order, once a foundation, became a wall. Rome stood straight. It held its breath. And Domitian watched closely, unaware that the greatest distance was now between himself and the world he ruled. By the final years of Domitian rule, Rome had become very good at one thing: staying calm on the surface. The streets were orderly, offices opened on time. The empire still functioned with impressive precision, and yet beneath this smooth exterior, tension lived comfortably, like furniture that had been in the room so long no one remembered choosing it. Domitian believed he had succeeded. Order was intact. Rules were followed. Disobedience was rare. To him, this meant stability. To everyone else, it meant caution had become a lifestyle. Inside the palace, routines continued, but trust had fully disappeared. People spoke carefully, compliments sounded rehearsed, silence filled the spaces where honesty once lived. Domitian noticed everything except the most important thing. He was alone in his certainty. The emperor continued to watch closely. Names appeared repeatedly in reports. Patterns seemed to form, or at least they felt real after reading them late into the night. When vigilance becomes constant, imagination assists it. Small inconsistencies felt meaningful. Familiar faces felt unpredictable. There is a quiet irony here. Domitian spent years watching others, yet he never noticed when watching turned inward. Fear no longer came from outside threats. It came from anticipation, the expectation that something was coming, something hidden, something inevitable. Those closest to him felt it first. The inner circle lived with constant pressure. Proximity no longer meant privilege, it meant risk. Being near power was dangerous when power trusted no one. Whispers began again, as they always do when silence dominates. Not loud whispers, practical ones, careful ones. Conversations about survival rather than ambition. No one wanted power, they wanted relief. This is often how such endings form. Not through ideology or rebellion, but through exhaustion. Fear does not inspire loyalty forever. Eventually, it inspires planning. The decision was not dramatic, it was quiet, measured, almost administrative. A conclusion reached not with anger, but with calculation. The palace had become too tense to sustain. Removing the source felt easier than enduring it. One day, the watchful man was watched back. Movement through familiar halls took on a different purpose. The routines Domitian valued provided structure even for this moment. Order did not collapse. It facilitated the end. Domitian did not expect betrayal from within. Absolute control rarely does. It assumes that silence means safety. In truth, silence often means patience. The assassination itself was swift, contained, devoid of spectacle, no crowds, no speeches, just an ending that matched the tone of his reign. Quiet, controlled, final. Rome reacted not with shock, but with release. The city did not erupt. It exhaled. People moved through the day with lighter steps. Conversations felt easier. Laughter returned cautiously as if testing the air. The Senate acted quickly. Decisions were made. The system adjusted. Rome had practice with transitions. The empire did not pause to mourn. It reorganized. Then came the erasure. Domitian's name was removed from public spaces, statues altered, inscriptions revised. It was as if the city collectively decided to tidy up memory. This was not rage, it was housekeeping. There is something quietly humorous in this process. A man obsessed with control lost control of how he was remembered. Or rather, he lost control of whether he would be remembered at all. History, like Rome, can be very practical. This erasure was not complete. It never is. Memory survives in whispers, records, and consequences. But the intention was clear. Rome wanted distance. It wanted to move forward without carrying the weight of constant observation. Time delivered its own judgment. Not immediate, not emotional, just gradual clarity. Domitian was neither a monster nor a hero. He was a man who believed order could replace trust. He learned too late that it cannot. His reign left behind lessons rather than admiration. Order is valuable. Discipline matters. But when watching replaces listening, isolation follows. And isolation weakens even the strongest authority. As night settles over Rome at the close of his story, imagine the city calm again, but softer. Lamps glow without tension. Guards stand at ease. The palace feels lighter, as if the walls themselves have relaxed. Domitian wanted Rome to stand straight. It did. He wanted it to feel safe. It eventually did, but not in the way he expected. His chapter ends not with chaos, but with quiet correction. The empire adjusted, memory shifted, life continued. And somewhere between vigilance and silence, Rome remembered something it had always known. Order is most stable when people feel seen, not watched. The watchful man is gone. The city sleeps. And history turns the page with a steady hand, already preparing for the next ruler who will believe he can control everything without consequence. As the stories of these emperors fade into the background, Rome itself remains. Not as marble ruins or dramatic tales, but as a quiet presence that lingers in the mind. The city has watched rulers rise and fall, each believing they understood power a little better than the last, and each discovering, in their own way, that power is never as obedient as it seems. Rome teaches us something simple and unsettling. Power does not create new qualities inside a person. It amplifies what already exists. Patience becomes calculation. Fear becomes suspicion. Creativity becomes self-obsession. Discipline becomes control. Whatever lives quietly inside a person tends to grow louder when authority removes resistance. None of these emperors began as monsters. Augustus wanted stability, Tiberius wanted distance, Caligula wanted affection, Claudius wanted order, Nero wanted admiration, Domitian wanted control. Each desire was understandable, even relatable. And yet, when these desires were given unlimited reach, they reshaped not only the rulers, but the world around them. Rome did not fall in a single dramatic moment. It did not collapse because of one enemy or one mistake. It slowly bent under the weight of human nature magnified. Decisions made for comfort became habits. Habits became systems. Systems outlived the people who built them. What is striking is how quiet most endings were. No thunder, no grand speeches, just adjustments, removals, transitions. Rome adapted again and again because adaptation was its greatest skill. Empires do not survive because leaders are perfect. They survive because people learn how to live under imperfect leadership. There is a faint humor in this long pattern. The most powerful individuals in the ancient world spent their lives worrying, watching, measuring reactions, listening for footsteps at night. Power promised certainty, yet delivered restlessness. Authority promised control, yet produced isolation. Rome reminds us that ruling others does not solve the problem of understanding oneself. In fact, it often makes that problem harder. When no one can say no, mistakes echo longer. When no one can disagree, imagination fills the silence. As listeners far removed from marble halls and torchlit corridors, we can afford to rest where these emperors could not. We can observe without anxiety, reflect without consequence. Let the stories drift rather than demand conclusions. The lesson Rome offers is not about judging the past. It is about noticing patterns. When leaders stop listening, systems harden. When fear replaces trust, silence spreads. When image matters more than reality, collapse begins quietly. Yet Rome also offers something gentle. Despite everything, life continued. Markets opened. Roads were used. Children grew up knowing only the world in front of them. History moved forward not with perfection, but with persistence. As you settle into rest, imagine Rome at night. Not the Rome of crowds and ceremonies, but the Rome of still streets and soft lamps, stone buildings holding the warmth of the day, a city breathing slowly after centuries of tension. The emperors are gone, their ambitions dissolved into memory. What remains is the rhythm of time and the quiet truth that power is never separate from the people who hold it. Perhaps that is why these stories still matter, not because they are grand, but because they are human. They remind us that control does not guarantee peace, that attention does not equal understanding, that silence can mean many things. And so we leave Rome as it often left its rulers, calm on the surface, complex beneath, still standing. Let the stories settle gently. There is nothing more to solve tonight, no verdict to deliver, just the steady understanding that history does not shout its lessons, it whispers them. Rome whispers still, and if you listen without urgency, you might hear something familiar. Not the voice of emperors, but the quiet reminder that power changes circumstances, not character. As the city fades into the distance, allow your thoughts to slow. The empire sleeps. The lessons remain. And you are free to rest without needing to rule anything at all.